Hey, what's up, guys? Joshua Hall here, Hall Physical Therapy. Today, I want to talk to you about an interesting topic, kind of a controversial topic, probably for some. But today's topic is ice really the solution, right? Does it even really reduce inflammation, and is that even really what we want? The answer may surprise some of you just because the common practice or what we've been told over and over. Put some ice on it, it'll feel better, right? Well, first off, it's important to realize that common practice isn't always best practice, okay? So, I'm simply going to present some of the recent facts, some of the latest research, and medicine sometimes moves slowly, so these things and the research takes time to catch up with actual practice. So for years, the practice of applying ice for inflammation has been used, right? The thought was that ice decreases blood flow to the area and thus minimizes the swelling, right? That's what we want, is less swelling. But is this really the right approach, okay? So long story short, the inflammation isn't actually a bad thing. It's actually the body's own natural process of cleaning things up. So the best analogy is to kind of simplify it down is that, the fresh blood comes in, that's kind of providing the nutrients or bringing the groceries in, right? While the garbage or all the excess negative things are taken out. This involves the lymphatic system and blood flow and that whole process. So the truth is that actually ice may actually be delaying the healing, and not helping it. So the truth is that that healing actually requires inflammation, okay? So we've all heard the term RICE, right? RICE, rest, ice, compression, elevation, right? We learned it in school from when we were young, and we've heard it probably a million times. So that term was actually coined by Dr. Merkin in 1978 when he wrote his best-selling sports medicine book, okay? So the fact that is now that even today, Dr. Merkin himself no longer believes in RICE or the term rest, ice, compression, elevation, okay? So times have changed since 1978. We would hope that medicine has advanced since then, right? So a few things, even from Dr. Merkin himself, is, ice keeps healing, and this is from the research, ice keeps healing cells from entering injured tissue, right? So when we apply ice to an injured tissue, it causes the blood flow near the injury to constrict and shut off, and the blood that brings in the healing cells of inflammation is kind of cut off. So the blood vessels don't open up as well, again, for many hours after the ice was applied. This decreases the blood flow, which can cause the tissue to die from decreased blood flow and even cause permanent nerve damage. So is that really what we want? I don't really think so, and I don't think that's what the research says either. So ice keeps healing cells from entering injured tissues, okay? And the next thing to realize is that anything that reduces inflammation also actually delays healing, and I'm going to give you some examples here, okay? So anything that actually reduces your immune response will also delay the muscle healing. So the healing can be delayed, and this is from the research as well as from Dr. Merkin. Cortisone type drugs, we know that affects the immune system, affects healing. Also, almost all pain relieving medicines such as NSAIDs. So all your NSAIDs actually delay the healing process. So definitely not the best thing. And immune suppressions that are often used to treat arthritis, cancer, psoriasis. Also applying cold packs or ice and anything else that blocks immune response to injury. So all of these things actually reduce inflammation and actually delay the healing process, right? The next thing to realize is that ice also reduces strength, speed, endurance, and coordination. And this is from Sports Medicine 2011 article. I'll post some of the article in the link below so you guys can look up some of the research, because I know some of you guys are going to be like, oh, what? Don't use ice. It's going to be crazy. So ice also reduces strength, speed, endurance, and coordination. So it's often used as a short-term treatment to help injured athletes, right, to get back into the game, to decrease pain. But it also, and the truth that it does reduce pain because it it slows the nerve conduction velocity. And that's why when you put ice on it, it doesn't allow the nerve to fire or conduct as well, and thus you don't have as much pain. And so you're like, oh, that helped. It felt better. But is it really beneficial in the long run, right? Ice has been shown to interfere with athletic strength, speed, endurance, and coordination. So in this research article that we mentioned, They searched 35 studies on the effects of cooling, and most used cooling for more than 20 minutes, and most reported immediately after cooling there was a decrease in strength, speed, power, and agility-based running. A short rewarming period returned the strength, speed, and coordination. So what the study recommended, the authors recommended that if cooling is done to limit the swelling, it should be done for less than 5 minutes, followed by progressive warming prior to returning to play. But combined with all the other research, is that really the best, right? So what should we do instead of RICE, right? Instead of RICE, rest, ice, compression, elevation, what should we do instead? And kind of the new thing is, still compression, not compression by itself, but compression, elevation, and active motion, right? Is really kind of what the research says is the best thing, right? And really this, even possibly heat after a few days after. I wouldn't do heat immediately, but it's best done under the supervision of a trained medical professional, right? Such as one of the rehab specialists here at Hall PT. We specialize in this kind of stuff. And so, so Dr. Merkin, the guy that coined RICE and no longer believes in it, he does mention, that even, if within 6 hours after injury, it's okay to use ice because it does help with the pain. If you really need help with pain up to 6 hours after injury, maybe it's okay. It's probably not going to be the best, help with the healing process, maybe even delay it a little bit. But, he does say that you could put it on 10 minutes, take it off 20, put it on 10 minutes, but definitely no reason to apply ice more than 6 hours after you've injured yourself. So thanks for listening. I realize this may be a controversial, mind-boggling topic for some, especially if you're in the medical field or whatnot, but post your thoughts below. I'll post Dr. Merkin's recent article. There's also tons of research articles and stuff out there to look at online. Of course, vet your sources. Be careful what you read online, because you could find any answer that you wanted online. So, but definitely post your questions and everything below, and I look forward to hearing what you guys think. Have a great day.